30 years, eh? ITC. If only I was 30 again. The answer is I pushed through 70. Me, Vlad, and Xi Jinping have a lot in common. We're all in our 70s and about to die soon. So look on the bright side as it stands. I love the comment, emotional intelligence. You know, I'm an old soldier at the end of the day, and I'm more inclined to the Spanish, I think, half Foreign Legion, whose motto was, long live death, down with intelligence, as a sort of what I call a guideline. So why, therefore, in fact, would I be speaking? Well, you can make a judgment of that as we go through. It's an interesting place, location, and room in particular to find ourselves in. James Barrie painted this progress of human development and knowledge and culture from 1777 to 1784. So that was 7 years it took him to, it's been updated since then, but it's basically the painting as it was. 7 years to do this depiction of human progress. I'll go to my grave disappointed in humanity. If you took that same 7-year period, and let's look at another time, let's say 1933 to 1940, you'd have Adolf Hitler being held up as Chancellor at the start of his painting, and the Battle of Britain being depicted at the end of his artwork. So the assumption that we somehow are getting better, we're getting bolder, we're getting more caring, we're more inclined to make the world a better place, to help humanity, is just not true. You know, someone once said, you know, the world is run by unreasonable men. They look at the world and see what's in it for them, as opposed to the reasonable person who tries to see how he or she fits into the world as it should be. And that's the sort of what I call, you know, rather gritty, sort of uncomfortable, slightly painful reality as we kick in to 2025 in this 21st century. So when Arno and Mark and all the rest say, you know, we try and do a sort of, oh, January, no drinking. When have I never not been drinking? The answer is, dry January. What a fateful, hateful thought that would be. The answer is I'll be dead soon, so I can drink as much as I like. But the assumption is somehow that oh right, we're going to have, what is that sort of kick start? Well, here's the thought. Now, I've looked at Rick's slides. He actually knows what he's talking about. I just make shit up as I go along. The answer is, yeah, and it's really good. And Sarah, she really, really knows what she's talking about. The answer is, but for me, the figures out of that period, 1933 to 1940, that 7-year period, the development and progress of humanity, yeah, the figures that I find really interesting, and they're pretty rough, but Britain's GDP investment in defense in 1933 was about 3%. In 1939, it was 19%. And in 1945, it was about 47%. These are scary figures. And what you need to take away with them, or from that, is if there was ever one term you need to hold close to your hearts as those responsible for this dependent digital era we live in, if you want peace, prepare for war. If our GDP in because Churchill said when he finished his books on the Gathering Storm and the Second World War, he finished off, said this was a war that was entirely avoidable. 80 million people dead, and the world wrecked. Because we just didn't invest hard enough with the sort of commitment, with the sort of energy, with the sort of determination and will which makes the difference. And we just bumbled along. It'll be all right on the night. And 1939 comes along, 1940 comes along, and the rest, as they say, is history. Churchill, his opening sort of reference, his sort of theme to his first book, he wrote 6 books on the Second World War. He wrote very intelligently. He said, history will be kind to me, for I intend to write it. So it was Churchill was lots of things. Yeah, he wasn't really stupid. The answer is, but in this case, his theme to his first book, and the first book was The Gathering Storm, which is this period I'm talking about, which is the point about people just not somehow thinking today is like yesterday and tomorrow is going to be a bit like today, but to recognize, in fact, what I call the clear and present danger that is there and faces us. His theme to that first book, if I can recall, said how we, the English-speaking people, through our carelessness, unwisdom, and good nature, allowed the wicked to rearm. How we, the English-speaking people, through our carelessness, unwisdom, and good nature, allowed the wicked to rearm. What's interesting in that really quite succinct, simple theme is the guilt for World War II, 80 million dead, and the world broken, absolutely laid with fascist Germany. Where did the blame lie? How we, the English-speaking people, through our carelessness, our unwisdom, and our good nature, allowed. The blame lay with us. So just hold that thought as we sit here, and you'll get the figures, you'll get the sort of sense, oh, here we go, and you think there's another series of sort of vertical, the end of the world is nigh, doom, gloom figures, it's all going south, etc., yeah? 2007, Jim Mattis, who was then running whatever it was, I went across, did some work with him in the Pentagon on looking at the sort of next 25 years for the US defense, came to the end and asked the question, what is the single greatest threat to the American military machine in 2007? Digital dependence. 2007. That's just got harder and harder and more empathetic and more and greater. We are totally and utterly hanging off our digital systems, and those you are all in this room either responsible for specifically or as part of your extensions, in fact Microsoft around as it looks. So the truth of the matter is, if there was ever a battle space that is dynamic, alive, living, and we're not doing as well as we should or could, well, it's your space. As I said, I'll be dead soon, so I don't give a rat's. You're responsible. You're the people who should look in the mirror and judge yourself each and every day as to whether you're worthy of holding that responsibility and are doing your utmost without fear or favor to pursue it and make sure that, in fact, the very best can be achieved with what you have, and that those in a more responsible position are aware, acutely aware, of precisely the challenge that you face. Voltaire rather nicely wrote once, optimism is the, let me get it right, optimism is the madness of insisting that all is well when we are miserable. Yeah. We get this sort of warm feeling all is well. It's sort of fantastic place. London's buzzing. I went and had a strawberry milkshake round at Five Guys before I came here. Really good. Yeah, you think life's okay. And yet just beyond the boundary. It's not. And, oh, you know it. Now, why would an old soldier, and I am a really old dog soldier that's broken and really should have been buried a long time ago. You know, why me and why here and why I2C and what is my part? Because I'm no tech giant. You get it all. I sort of get it, you understand it. That's the quantum difference that comes through here. Well, my world, simply dynamic and consistent change. Persistent uncertainty, multiple and divergent threats, capable and determined and committed enemy, insufficient resources of money and time, and a constant fear of failure. 38 years as Captain Jack Sparrow, that's what I had. That's your world. Persistent uncertainty, insufficient resources, a clear and present danger, a committed and determined enemy. This is the reality, not just going in and clearing left hand to the right hand side of your, clearing your inbox, doing the day's work. People are out there, whether it's nation states, whether it's individual organizations, whether it's organized crime, whether it's just somebody who just wants to break it. I remember years ago looking at somebody trying to put together a red team. This young fella came in, he was about 23 years old. He'd already spent 3 years in jail under Her Majesty's pleasure because he was a classic, he was a legendary carder. He took people's identity and made money out of it, and he was really, really good. And we thought he'd be quite an attractive guy to have as a red team player, not with I2C, but a different organization I was working with at the time. And so myself and others interviewed him. Now, we'd done our backroom checks and checked. He had done 2 hacks and broken into the police system when he was in jail, in effect, what I call as it was. And we asked him the question, said, you know, do you do anything proper when you're there? And he gave it all, no, absolutely not. So we gave it all, right, we're not going to hire you, son. You know. At the end of it, I said, look, really interesting. There was nothing to this individual. You know, just literally skeletal. The truth was, you know, put him on a keyboard and he became Thor. And his interest, he would have happily broken the entire banking system in the United Kingdom just because he could. Not because he should, not because there was some advantage to him, just some sense of, I can do this, so I will. So the range of actors who are wishing to, in fact, what I call basically undo your businesses is bloody legendary. You know, my life was really simple as a soldier. The enemy were reasonably sort of taught, relatively, you could do some metrics, you get all that. You have an extraordinary canvas of actors who, like I said, whether they're in St. Petersburg, whether they're wherever they may be, just simply are looking for the weaknesses and the flaws. And I've got a 10-minute card coming up there, so I'm obviously talking too much. So, if there was one message you need to take, that first one which I said, if you want peace, prepare for war. So that means you have to convince those that you work with and work for, whatever it may be, that whatever resources, and just asking for more isn't good enough. You've got to justify why you need more, but I guarantee you probably do need more. And you need to look at your defense as I would do in the good old bad days. You know, if you just have the Maginot Line, it looks really good. Germany wasn't so stupid to try and go through it, they just went round it. So the old max, you have to have defense in depth. You have to get this extraordinary range of responsibilities and understanding of how you and your business is protected from those, and there is no shortage of those that will have at you for either scraping your data, for in fact what I call stealing your data, for in fact misusing your data, for ransom, whatever it may be, all of the above. And you start at those which you have no control over, all your suppliers, all your logistics lines, all the faraways, all your information grabs, all that side of life, yeah, which you have to go out into the other and pull in. Then you've got your people. Can't stop the old, click. Yeah? Just can't stop themselves. What's that? Click. Yeah? And I'm pretty good at this shit. And yet occasionally I'll find myself giving it, what's that? Yeah? I'm normally now clever enough. No social media, none of that, yeah? But the truth of the matter is, so your people are just people. They're good souls, invariably, most of them, but they will make errors unknowingly, unconsciously, and therefore you have that first line of defense. So doing something with that sort of housekeeping and all that, really, really important. Then you have your systems. That's your Maginot line, in many ways, you might say, as it stands. Are they updated? Are they looked after? Actually, in fact, all of you, CISOs and all the rest who are responsible for this stuff, spend a great deal of your time dealing with, in fact, what I call the system updates, making sure it's incoherent. All the regulatory oversights, all the pressures that are placed upon, have you done this, have you done that, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, so it's a huge amount of effort just to manage that really substantial piece of your defensive posture as an organization. Then you step back and say, well, who's looking at the sector? Who's looking at from a UK position, from a European position, from a Western position, from whatever it may be? Well, the answer is you probably, unless you're a big organization, you don't have the manpower or the woman power and the time. Who's doing the red teaming? Who is actually out there hunting and trying to, in fact, assess the nature of the emerging and new ways that you're going to be attacked? If you don't have that, if you have that, the answer is well done. Just make sure it's good. But it's a sort of ITCs or whatever, and I'm not pumping for ITC, they just know what they're doing, but there's a whole range of ITC. Somebody who basically has your 6 o'clock. The sniper on the hill, the UAV that's running overhead, yeah? The idea, we'll just go in and give it a wing off. No. I always had the sniper on the hill, I always had the UAV overhead, and a whole lot of bombers on tap too, whatever it may be. You always had this overwatch. Get an overwatch whose job it is to do nothing other than understand the emerging and the developing threats and challenges and the methods and the methodology and the way they will come in and open your system, break it, steal it, abuse it, do whatever they want to do with it. Because that's what's going to happen. And then the final part of your defense is make sure you have a big brother. Now, whether that's Microsoft, we love Microsoft, whether it's AWS, whether it's Oracle, it doesn't really matter, yeah? It has to be one of the massive, huge enterprises that sit out there. Why? Because they are spending billions upon billions of dollars every year because they can't get it wrong. Then you've got something which I would recognize as being a sort of defense in depth as it stands, as it looks. Without that, you're sitting there a bit like King Canute in a pair of Wellington boots and you need waders, or you're sitting a bit like the French on the Maginot Line. It looks good. I guarantee it will be undone. Everything out there in the world is in flux. Opportunities abound. The world has already gone through an inflection point of change which has been occurring for the last 20 years and no one's really been paying attention. You know, every sort of ASEAN's a big deal. The UN's a big deal. BRICS. Who was paying attention to BRICS 2009 when it was established in Shanghai by Vladimir Putin? Nobody really. Now, over half the world population, a third of its GDP, and rising. Non-aligned. Oh, not Western aligned. So you have that. Then you have, in fact, what are called the unpredictability, not only of Xi Jinping, not only the unpredictability of Vladimir Putin, not the only unpredictability of Iran, of North Korea. Keep taking a little unpredictability at the moment, trying to understand how, in fact, the new President of the United States will address, in fact, both domestic and his international stage. Everything is uncertain. And in uncertainty, opportunities abound. And in that space, all the bad actors or the opportunists will look to cleaning up as quick as they can and as fast as they can. And that probably gives me 5 minutes to take any questions on anything other than gardening. I hate gardening. When I go to hell, I'm surely going there. I'm going to be made to bloody garden. Yeah? So, any question on anything? I'm just an old bloke and really have a sort of a random view on. So don't. Come on, here we go. Lady.
When do we tell the banks, when do we tell the medical centers that the data they're collecting is dangerous?
Oh. You take the medical centers, for instance, I got a good friend. You take, for instance, WannaCry. Remember it, 2016? WannaCry just comes out of North Korea and smokes the NHS. Was it intended to hit the NHS? Nope. How much did it cost the NHS? Well, I have it on reasonable authority, about 92 million quid. 92 million pounds. Even in my book, that's a load of money. And it wasn't designed to do it. Why did it do it? How could it do it? Well, because you had parts of the NHS still running literally on MS-DOS. Now, hey, the answer is I'll be going to hospital soon at some point in time. Hopefully I'll die before I get there, and so it's really simple. I don't have to, in fact, waste any taxpayers' money. But what I need is to make sure that it's not just the clinicians that are making the decisions in the NHS and the hospitals, but actually people that, in fact, like yourselves at the end of the day, who are involved in that, who can turn around and say, understand what the consequence and cost of having unreliable or dangerously corrupted data, for instance, on your blood, and what that would mean in the way of confidence and trust over the way, and duty of care, and what you can and cannot do. And the NHS, as I recall, is the 5th largest data bank in the world. Yeah? So this is a huge amount of, my personal information. You can do what you like with it, I don't give a rat's. But actually, for a lot of people, it does matter. So the truth of the matter is, you think, I need the money to get a new CAT machine, new MRI scanner, whatever the case may be. I get that part. You need the money to make sure you absolutely can safeguard and secure your data. You can transfer it and use it actually at machine speed and safely between, in fact, what are called different trusts in order to maximize the use of that. Don't go for a bespoke system. Use, in fact, one of the big partners, whatever the case may be. But the reality is, if you cannot secure that, like I said, I could absolutely, you just think of the social and political impact of me being able to, in fact, what I call just undo confidence in the blood data banks of the NHS as to its digital footprint. So.
Hi, Sir Graeme. I'm Matthew.
Yeah, the sir just came with it. There's a lot of people's backs I stood on, yeah.
You're bigger than me, nothing else. With a constrained defence budget, how would you see the split between cyber and traditional military
great question. Yeah, the answer is I guarantee the Army, Navy and Air Force will give it. We want more boats, we need more planes, manned planes, and we need more soldiers. In 2014, I gave a lecture at US Special Operations Command in America, and the slide, I actually used a slide that day, yeah. Rick's got some great slides, I haven't got any, but the slide I used that day just had the figures. It said 10% in 10 years. Now, I was being a bit naughty, but here are the International Special Operations Community in 2014. So we're just coming out of Afghanistan or thereabouts. We've done with Iraq here. We've had a whole period of time of what I call sort of professional development, operational use, and commitment. I put this up, 10%, 10 years, and said nothing for about 40 seconds. Yeah, and everybody thought, oh, he's lost it. He's obviously having a moment. Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't have moments. And eventually I said, so they then stopped looking at me and they went back and re-looked at the figures and re-thought about what I put up there. And I said, it is my professional opinion and view simply that only 10% of the competencies in this room will be relevant in 10 years' time. I was at a Google gathering the other day where the question was asked, how soon could you go autonomous? Fully autonomous. Now, it was quite interesting because the panel then came back and said, well, actually, the question is, when could we and when will we? And one of the members of that panel turned around, ex-NASA guy, really smart, big brain, turned around and said, we could go fully autonomous today, but we won't. So we should move significantly into the autonomous digital cyber space, probably to the tune of about 20% of the defense budget, if not 30. We won't. I think it was Eisenhower once said, beware the defense industrial base. There are people who make planes, boats, submarines, and tanks, whose probably view is that we need more of those. We need those, don't get me wrong. There's nothing like a main battle tank to actually concentrate your attention if you haven't got one and you're in the wrong place. But the reality is you don't just need battle tanks. You need a whole range of other skills, and a lot of those are in the cyber and the digital space. Because we are, as a nation, as a species, totally, if I'm not mistaken, and forever, inescapably digitally dependent. And so that's why what you do is absolutely at point. I cannot underestimate the responsibility that you probably don't feel, but you absolutely own in all your little pieces. Because the truth of the matter is, you undo a nation. We're a nation of shopkeepers, so they say. So every single shop represents something which you can digitally undo, disrupt, destroy. Do that collectively at the end of the day, you just bleed the will of the nation. So.
Thank you, sir, for your speech. Really, really interesting. My name is Ruslan, Corso Company. I came from Ukraine. I understand what you are talking about. A lot of people think that war is coming, but I think we have a war right now, cyber war, and a lot of people they don't see it. And my question is, what's the biggest challenge at the moment in cyber field?
Oh, there's a lovely line that says the most difficult, I think it was Boney Fuller or Little Hart, one of those guys in the 30s, turned around and said, the most difficult thing to do before getting a new idea into the military is getting the old one out. And so I think what we have now, not so much you, because you both get it and you understand it, but if you go on to the top end of your businesses, your boards, to government, to the regulatory oversight that sits within that, you look at all of this here, the answer is, do they get, they would sort of nod and sort of say, oh, he's, cheery old card, General Lamb, he's a really sort of interesting old bloke, he's really past it now, sort of, et cetera, et cetera. They probably wouldn't be wrong in that respect, yeah. But they would avoid the harsh reality of what we're saying and what we're discussing here, and the importance of getting this bit right. And so the problem you have is trying to convince those above you in resource, time, effort, money, clarity of the danger, the clear and present danger that you face, of just what you are doing on their behalf. Yeah, and they'll nod and they'll agree and they'll, fine words, noble sentiment, worthless. Now, I listen to what people say, I judge them by what they bloody well do. Make sure they do what you need them to do to give you every advantage in what is a very dangerous and difficult time for everyone in this room with your responsibilities. I think Ukraine's about to go in some interesting times. You'll get a ceasefire this year. It won't be on your terms. You'll lose 4 provinces, and I wish you well.